Favorite road trip snack?
Kit Kats.
Toughest opponent you've faced?
Oklahoma.
Best advice a coach has ever given you?
Just do it.
Music or playlist that gets you game ready?
Headlines by Drake.
One thing that you're passionate about outside of basketball?
Jesus.
If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Know who you do it for.
One drill you never skip?
Stretching.
Favorite lift?
Squats.
Nice.
Hot take. Definitely hot take.
Hardest skill to master?
Golf. Started this summer, so I know I've learned that the hard way.
Best recovery tool?
Fireflies.
One habit that changed your game?
Consistency.
Okay. What separates good players from great ones?
Mindset.
Perfect. All right. Welcome to Building the Athlete. I'm your host, Scott Benson. This is our first show of the new year. Excited to have Haleigh Timmer of Oklahoma State University on the show. Haleigh, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Super excited to be on here. Scott, you've done so much for sports just in the Black Hills and now reaching such a much bigger audience. And I'm just excited to learn from you, continue to learn from you, and chat with you today.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. Number one, I got to tell you, I did my best to wear the Oklahoma State colors today. I've got my my branded Bills nice orange camo hat, and it pains me a little bit because as a former Iowa State Cyclone, Oklahoma State was a competitor. But I think after all these years, maybe I can let that go a little bit and support Oklahoma State and Haleigh Timmer. So let's just start with a really basic question, Haleigh. When did basketball first become a part of your life?
Yeah, I started playing in third grade, and honestly, the second I started playing it, I fell in love with it. And I think that's kind of the story for most people in sports is they love it when they start. And yeah, so third grade was when I really started, and from there, I never put it down.
Okay. So we started working together. I think you were 10 or 11 years old. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think it was fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Okay. I remember the coaching staff and we used to kind of joke because as a young athlete, you were so locked in. Like, explain a little bit how at that age, when a lot of times we're just herding cats with 10 and 11-year-olds, you were coming in with a business-like mentality. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just how I grew up. My dad kind of instilled work ethic in me, and he built up two businesses. Just that takes a lot of work and effort and consistency and persistence. And I think he instilled that in me just with the day to day of how he lived his life. And my parents both honestly gave me such a great life. And so just watching them provide for our family and show up every day and give their all kind of instilled those values in me. And so I think I've always kind of been just wired that way to go 100% and all in with everything that I do. And obviously it helps that I was super passionate about sports, athletics, specifically basketball, but I think that just spilled into everything I did.
So was it the things that your dad would tell you, or was it just seeing him build businesses and live that day to day?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was seeing what he did. I think he leads a lot by example, but obviously there is some parenting that goes into that too. And I think he would always encourage me, whatever it is that you want to do, you're going to work at it with all your heart. And he really spurred me on too. Like the second I picked up basketball, my parents were so invested in getting me in all the camps they possibly could, bring me to the gym at 5 a.m. to shoot. Like as a third grader, that's kind of unheard of. Maybe not in this day and age now, but at the time it was. And so they kind of were ahead of the ball on all of that stuff and just obviously supporting me through that and getting me to the places I needed to get. And big part of that was getting in and training with you.
Were you always a super competitive kid when you were young?
Yeah, I would say I've always been really competitive. I mean, just with basketball starting so young, I just remember the first time I tried a layup and I was really really because I was like, I want to be the best at this. Like if I'm the only one that can't do this, I'm going to be pissed. So when I did it, I obviously had the natural ability, but I think my competitive nature is kind of natural to me, and I don't think you can necessarily teach that. So yeah, I think that has got me really far in my life and in my athletics career. Yeah, I always remember being super competitive, wanting to be the best at everything that I do, and pushing myself until I can be the best.
Yeah. And I try to with athletes, that theme is very common, and I always make sure I ask those questions because we're going to talk about training and being competitive, but at the end of the day, every high level athlete I've ever worked with, ever met, there's that X factor, that competitiveness, that mental thing that, like you said, that can't be taught. That's just something that people are wired with. Now, I do think people can get better at it. I think, you can uncover that in individuals sometimes, but a lot of times I think you're spot on when you say that you're just kind of born that way. And I just see that a lot with a lot of athletes. So, everybody knows Haleigh Timmer, the basketball player that, in high school, you were the Gatorade Player of the Year, you were Miss Basketball. What a lot of people might not know is, that you were a state champion cross country runner. I believe that was in 7th grade, correct?
Yeah, 8th grade maybe? 7th or
7th,
8th, I
okay.
can't really remember.
And then you were a multi-time state champion track and field athlete in the 400 and 800, several relays, and you were an incredible volleyball player as well. How do you feel that the multiple sports prepared you for college basketball?
Yeah, I think, like, looking back, I'm so grateful that I had so many sports and that I was involved in so many sports. I think it stretches you to be challenged in different ways, both physically and mentally, honestly. Obviously, like, basketball was my love, my main sport, and I was really good at it. And so I think doing other sports that maybe I had to be challenged more to be motivated or be consistent in really challenged me mentally, just to obviously, like, physically, like, every sport has a different goal, right? Like track, like, it's individual, that's extremely mental. Obviously, you train in a completely different way. And so just having all those different perspectives, I think really makes you better at the main thing. And I'm super grateful that I had those experiences. A lot of my teammates in college, they talk about how they only played basketball in high school. And I just think that's super interesting. And I don't know if that's a bad thing necessarily because you're pouring into your craft and putting your all into that, but I do think it does make you a more well-rounded athlete when you do have other sports and just gaining that perspective and being challenged in different ways.
Yeah. I always have that conversation as well. I talk to a lot of, basketball, volleyball, football, and a lot of them will say the most nervous they ever were was at a state track meet where, you have a huge event, you've got 10,000 people watching you, and you're on an island out there. Did you kind of have that same feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people, like, I could never be as nervous for a basketball game as I was for a track meet. And so I think even just having that perspective, like, kind of lightens the load when it comes to performing in basketball and like knowing you have a team backing you. But I mean, it is those experiences that build you and build your mental toughness. And I'm really grateful that I did that.
There's been such a debate out there that, about you have to be a multi-sport athlete to be a college athlete. And I really believe it's a case by case basis. Every kid is different. I think, over the last 5 or 10 years, saying that it doesn't even qualify anymore now with the transfer portal, with NIL. The whole recruiting process is so much different to where, high school kids are no longer even really being looked at the Division 1, Division 2 level, where they can just go grab somebody out of the portal and fill a roster. So I do think in some circumstances, you do have to put it all into one thing if you think you have the opportunity to go play immediately out of high school. So I think there's good arguments on both sides of it. For sure, like you said, being in other sports stretches you because you might not have that same confidence level, and you might not have, just where you are in basketball, where you're the best player on the floor, you may not feel that stepping onto a different court or a different track. So I do think it's such a good thing. So let's talk about stretching. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you or if I've ever asked you this. So I think this was it could have been 8th grade, it could have been freshman year. And we were leading up to the state track meet, and the distance coach kept coming to me saying, I can't field a 4x8. We have got 3 good runners. I don't know what to do. I'm going to maybe think about this person or that person. And we're talking a week before the state track meet. And I said, hey, don't worry about it. I got it. I know who's going. And he's like, what? He said, who? I said, Haleigh Timmer. And He said, "She's never run an 800 in her life." I said, "Just trust me on this one. Just trust me. She's the right person." I said, "But here's kind of the caveat of this is when you tell her, not when I tell her, when you tell her she's running an 800, we're going to wait until the day before." And he's like, "Are you crazy? Like, you can't do that to somebody." I said, "I know this kid. I know what she's made of." And I said, "Number one, the longer we give her to think about it, the longer she has to freak out about it. So let's wait till the day before. Let's tell her, and I guarantee you she's going to come through." And sure enough, I don't remember. I think he ran like a tooth split, something amazing for somebody that's never run it. And just an awesome memory of mine. But I don't think I've ever asked you, how are you feeling when you found that out?
Yeah, I think I was like, literally what? Like, I just remember being so like surprised and like honestly a little nervous, but like I think one thing about me is I'm gonna find a way. And I think you knew that about me, even if I didn't know it about myself at the time. But I think there's something to be said about when someone like you, who has been along my journey for so long, instills that confidence in you. And if you think I can do it, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm gonna do it. And I think honestly, yes, the fact that you waited the day before was a very smart idea, because I am an overthinker. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I think ignorance was bliss in that case, and I didn't know what an 800 was gonna be. Uh, but yeah, I'm glad that those experiences that stretched me, have made me honestly so much of a better athlete. But yeah, I was very, very nervous.
I remember when I was in college, the coaches came to me and they were filling out the conference roster, and you can only take 24 people, and it was between 3 or 4 people. I was a team captain at the time, so they were asking who I thought was best, and there was a high jumper that it was the same situation. I said, "Hill doesn't know that he's not supposed to beat those guys." And sure enough, they brought him and he ended up placing 6th or 7th and got his points. And he just was, he didn't understand that he was not supposed to beat the guys that he beat. And like you said, ignorance is bliss in those situations. But that was certainly fun to watch you do, and then to follow the rest of your track and field career, winning state titles in the 400 and 800. And really, I mean, let's be honest, you were probably training 1 day a week, because with club basketball, you were gone all the time. A lot of times you were too beat up to even to train when you get back to town.
Yeah.
It's just amazing to the things that you accomplished. And so much of it is just that natural athletic ability and then that mindset that you always had. I think you just said it, I'll find a way. And I mean, you found a way to, I mean, you uprooted one of the best 800 runners in state history, who had won like 8 state titles, and you beat her. You weren't supposed to beat her. You shouldn't have beat her, but you did beat her. And I think that just goes back to show how mentally strong that you are. So let's kind of step back to high school. You'd been training with us for, 4 years at that point, 3 years at that point, and now you're in high school. And again, I've kind of already asked this question, but why did you take the weight room so serious at such a young age, when a lot of girls are intimidated to get in the weight room? They're afraid they're going to get too big. Whatever the excuse is, why did you kind of latch on to that and take it so serious?
Yeah, I think it's multiple things. I think initially just the drive that we talked about that I had to be the best I could be. And I knew that was a big part of it. And I think just the second that I got to the gym, like the coaches, like I think you and I think Taylor was there at the time, just the intentionality of the group that was training me up really instilled confidence in me that what you guys were doing was going to put me in the best position to be successful. Um, and then I just think like the process is fun because everything good is on the other side of hard. And I think when you overcome obstacles in the weight room like that, and then you see the results, like that's addicting. And you want to come back the next day and crush another obstacle and accomplish the next thing. And I think when you get a taste of that and you get a taste of the success that's on the other side of that hard, you come back and you want to just keep keep getting better and keep improving. And I think I saw a lot of those results and I saw a lot of the benefits of the training that I did with you guys. And honestly, I saw the success that it led to.
Yeah. Was there anybody that was training at that same time with you that you kinda saw, like an older girl that you saw that was killing it in the weight room and killing it with speed development and those type of things?
Yeah, I always think about like Kira Duffy and Drew Gilton, and those girls were a lot older than me, and I really looked up to them. And specifically, they were in basketball. So I did really look up to them. And just seeing them show up every single day and getting to train with them and alongside them, I think was really encouraging and inspiring for me. And I think that goes a long ways. Like they were winning state titles and I could see their process leading to the results that I someday wanted. And so just having those people in your life that you can look up to that are putting in the work and getting those outcomes is really encouraging.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with winners is a huge thing. I've seen so many athletes that, they don't. They surround themselves with people who are not going to lift them up, people that will pull them down. And, when they say it takes a village, that's so true. And I advise all of my athletes, get around people who are way better than you. I don't know if you remember back when Tip Ryman and Jacob Hyde were training and Tip was on the podcast and we talked about this. He would literally go into the bathroom and cry because Jacob, he couldn't do something and he was so competitive that it tore him up inside. And he would literally go tear up in the bathroom. And now the guy's an NFL tight end. And so, when you're wired that way, you're sure you enjoy the good things in life, but the downfalls you probably take them harder than most people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's great risk and great reward to being a competitor, and you have to be willing to accept both. And I think just wanting to be in a pressure situation comes with the risk of failure and it comes with the risk of losing, but it's always worth it to win. So it's always worth it to show up and put yourself in a position to win, even if you're going to be let down sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and we definitely we learn far more from our failures than we do from our successes. Can you think of a specific instance in your athletic career where you didn't perform the way that you wanted to or call it a failure? And what did you take away from that and how did you make a change?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like my freshman year of college was really hard for me. I think going from high school to college is a big challenge, and only the best ones can prove themselves and make it in college and excel in college. And so I think it was like a challenge for me to just learn a new system and find my niche. Honestly, after being like everyone get is the best player on their high school team, getting to college, you might have to be a role player for a little bit so you can prove yourself and all of that. And I think my freshman year was a little bit challenging at first, but I think I really learned from those setbacks and from the disappointments that I had in the first half of that season, just how to persevere and how to just keep going. And just honestly, you have to be your number one fan. You have to believe in yourself more than anyone else does. And I think I learned that really early on that no, my career is my responsibility and I can't rely on anyone else for my confidence. And I think those setbacks really taught me that I have to be my biggest advocate and I have to persevere and show what I can do every single day, even when it doesn't feel good and even when I don't think people see me for what I can do. And I ended up finishing my freshman year super well. We went to the WNIT that year and we won the championship and I was on the all tournament team as a freshman. And so I think that really just taught me that, you can't give up when there's setbacks and you can't give up when other people don't see you. Like you have to be responsible for your own career and you have to do what it takes to get back on the horse the next day and go prove everybody wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I want a couple more questions about just high school athletic development. What was something that you saw, from a training perspective, whether it was like I've already mentioned, like, the strength training part of it, the plyometric training, the speed training. What was something that you experienced that you saw a direct correlation to on the court, or you felt a
Mhm.
difference or it helped your game?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple things that come to mind. One of them is I really didn't get injured at all in high school, and I think that really speaks to the foundation of just strength that I had being in the weight room consistently. I think you avoid a lot of injuries that a lot of athletes in middle and high school get. And so I always think about that in hindsight. Like the foundation I was building all over those years really set me up to be healthy and you can only get recruited when you're healthy in high school. So I think that is a huge, huge part of just taking care of your body. And then another thing, I think you guys do a really good job of just integrating like the plyometrics, like you said, the speed and the strength. I mean, a lot of people focus on just lifting and just maxing out every week. And I think the combination of all of those makes it really functional and it translates to the court. Because obviously, I'm not just posting up a 6'10" girl every game. I'm also jumping up to get rebounds and translating the explosiveness too and translating the strength into explosiveness. And I think you guys really just hit the jackpot on all of those things.
Okay. Um, so here's a situation that I have a lot is we've got high school basketball players and obviously AAU is huge. If there's going to be a pathway, it's just kind of one of those things that you have to do. But then what I see happens is, I've got kids that are playing 50 to 70 games in the off season. That's more than NBA players play when you combine it with the high school season. They're beat up constantly. The last thing they want to do is get in the weight room. And so I struggle sometimes with the basketball, but that's the world that we live in, and that's not going to change. So, what would your advice be to those high school basketball players that want to move on to the next level in regards to being in a training program?
Yeah, I think a lot of athletes shy away from getting in the gym during the season and while you're performing and while you're competing. But I think it's almost just as important as in the off season to get in and have those consistent reps. And you can speak to the science behind that, but I know for me, like in high school, even me and Marin Duffy would come in for game day lifts. And I think that just helped us to activate all the muscles that we needed to compete and be explosive and get those fast twitch muscles going. And so obviously you can speak more to that, but I think it's super important to be consistent with it because your body's going to respond so much better when you are. And it just gets you ready and it keeps that foundation we were talking about too to keep your body healthy and keep even the mobility of it, like even working on mobility throughout the season is so important. Keeping your body as healthy as possible is so important.
Yeah, I think the consistency piece is one of the biggest separators from those that go on and those that don't. Every high-end high school athlete that I've ever trained that has gone on to a college or professional career, well, guess what? They all had schoolwork, homework. They all had family. They all had social lives. They all had boyfriends or girlfriends, on and on and on. And those athletes that I've had, and including yourself, no matter what, you found a way to commit to, if it was off season, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours a week, in season, a couple hours a week. And, I think that's a huge separator. And that's honestly, it's committing to something, being disciplined and seeing it through. You just can't make up for lost time when it comes to training and athletic development. You can't not do it and then try to do it all your senior year. You just cannot replace those years that you missed. One thing I see, how many through your career of South Dakota State and Oklahoma State, how many kids have you seen freshmen that have come in that had no experience in a training program?
Yeah, there's definitely been a few, or people that, like you said just now, only went last couple years of their high school career or just their senior year to get ready for college. I think there's a lot of athletes that come into college underprepared for that piece of it, and I think that sets them back in their career and it makes them less useful right away in college.
Yeah, not only can it set you back, it can break you down. If your
Yeah.
body is not accustomed to training 3, 4, 5 days a week, and now you go to college, you're in a new place, away from home, eating differently, everything's different, and now you're expected to be in the weight room 4 or 5 days a week on top of practice. I've seen a lot of kids just physically break down and not be able to handle it. And that's unfortunate because, I've seen that happen to a lot of really, really good athletes. So let's shift gears here. Let's start talking about, as transitioning to college, you shined at SDSU. You helped build something very, very special there. What is your biggest takeaways from your time at South Dakota State University?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'll talk about is just the power of like really watering the ground that you're on and building up something somewhere. And we were just talking about the transfer portal and all of that and just kids jumping around for money and all of that. And I think something really unique about South Dakota State is just the loyalty and the commitment there and just it's kind of like high school. Like you grow up there. You keep continuing to move up the totem pole throughout your career and you continue to have a bigger role every year. And I think that's something really cool about South Dakota State and something I'm super grateful to have experienced at the college level because I think it's really rare. But I do think I learned there how to just persevere and really just get the most out of what I was in and just cultivate the relationships and the program that I was in, and I think we built something really special there, and we can go into it later too, but I think there was, like, a ceiling for me there in a way where I had to look internally and think, "Am I being complacent?" And ultimately, that's why I left, but I would never take away the experience I had there just because I think there's such power in cultivating where you're at and just pouring into those around you and pouring into the program that you're in.
All right. So, two-part question. Number one, and I'm asking this genuinely because I don't really remember. Did you have doubters that were concerned that you'd be able to play at the Division One level? And then the second part of that question is, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make from high school to the Division One level?
Yeah, I don't know if I had, like, a ton of, like, outward doubters, but I will say my sophomore AAU season was horrible for me. Like, my coach didn't really play me. It was the biggest recruiting year I had by far. Like, that's when most people get all of their offers, and it was a horrible season for me, and because of that, like, I feel like I didn't get recruited, at the level I probably was at, and, that was that was probably, like, the biggest, like, doubter was my coach at the time, and just having to navigate, like, that was really tough, and then after that, I was gonna wait that next season, but then COVID hit, and so everyone was like, "Oh, shoot, like, we don't know the scholarship availability," all of that. So I committed, and I'm grateful I did, but I do think, like, in that sense, there was doubters just with what level I was recruited at out of high school.
What was the biggest adjustment you had to make going from high school club to the Division One level?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is avoiding burnout and continuing to find ways to get better and, like, keep the passion in it. Honestly, I felt over-prepared for college just from the training aspect, just with training with you, and, honestly, your workouts were a lot harder than a lot of my college workouts, so I felt over-prepared in that way. And then also AU, like, practices were extremely hard and intense and honestly a lot harder than a lot of my college practices, which obviously you're not going 5, 6 days a week, in AAU, but I think just having the intensity of both lifting and basketball really prepared me for the level of college. But I would just say like the mental side of college where everyone is good. It's not you're not the best. I think was the biggest hardship going from high school to college is realizing that oh, you're not the best anymore. Like you got work to do and you have to find a way uh to get better and you're responsible for your own career and there's going to be people that pour into you but at the end of the day it's up to you to make it happen and to get in the gym and get those extra reps so
Did you have a welcome to college basketball moment that you remember?
honestly I think it was like day one we played free play which is just 5 on 5 No coaches were there, and it was in the summer of my freshman year, and I was like, "Wow, this is completely different." Like, the speed, the physicality, everyone's strong, everyone's fast, everyone's really good. So I think that was honestly right away for me is when I realized that this is a lot different than high school.
How did your role change from high school to college?
Honestly, I think in high school, you can get away with taking it to the rim every time because you're faster than everyone and you're probably the same size or bigger than everyone. But when you get to college, that's just not always an option. And so I really had to expand my 3-point game. And I think I'm a lot better shooter now than I was in high school. And so I think honestly, getting to college, like my game became more dynamic, if anything, just being able to score at all three levels rather than being more of a driver in high school. It obviously was confined at times too, just with the level. But I think, like I was talking about earlier, like true competitors find a way. And I think I had to do that by expanding my game to the 3-point line and then also like establishing a mid range.
Okay. So you've got a high school, let's say a high school senior, which this isn't very realistic because most D1s sign their junior year, but let's just say for the point of this is we've got a senior in high school that signs in November to play Division 1, Division 2 basketball. What would you advise them to do spending the next 6 months preparing for college? What would you advise them to do?
I would say, obviously, consistency with training and like lifting, like we talked about, lifting and getting in with your sport and skill training. But I would also do a lot of mental work of just knowing who you are and knowing what gifts you bring and not shying away from that when you get there. I think as a freshman it's really easy for your confidence to go in the hands of people. But you have to stand firm in that and know who you are and know that no matter what, like, you say about me, I know I can do this, and you have to be your biggest advocate and just know that you have those gifts and be humble enough to take criticism, but also know your value and just do the mental work before you get there of knowing this is who I am and I'm gonna be I'm gonna be a big player or athlete for you. Like,
Yeah. I had a couple episodes ago, I had Dr. Nathan Zinser on, who he's the author of the book The Confident Mind, which is one of my favorites. I give it out to a lot of my athletes. And we talked a lot of there's so much talk about mental prep and mental strength and all that. Is there anything that you specifically do as an athlete that works for you that you can share?
yeah, I think past success gives you a lot of confidence. Your training gives you a lot of confidence. And when feelings get in the way, I think you can always go back to the truth of who you know you are. When I do that, when I reflect on just the truth of who I know I am, um, I always remember like who I am. And so I think it's important to remember what you've done in the past because that's evidence of what you can do in the future. I think remembering just who you are off the court too. My faith is really important to me, and I know that God defines me at the end of the day. So having that unwavering truth about yourself too that you can cling to when things maybe aren't going good, I think can keep you level and keep you neutral minded in the sense of if I did fail, that's not necessarily going to happen again. And I have had success in the past. And just keeping a neutral mind, I think, of what can I do right now to just move forward and have the best outcome in the future. And I think that really just goes back to clinging to the truth, whether that's good or bad. Like, you're going to make mistakes, and that's the truth too. But that doesn't mean that's who you are. That doesn't mean that's going to happen again. But I think just keeping a neutral mind.
Yeah, yeah. That was so well said. So many athletes I think lose their identity to their sport or who they are in their sport, and it's hard to come back to anything because all they know is Haleigh Timmer, the basketball player, or whoever it is with what sport. And I think having that intrinsic value, and like you said, knowing who you are, but having an identity outside of just being a basketball player. And I think you said that perfectly. So you're wrapping up your career at South Dakota State, and I believe you used the transfer portal the way that it was designed to be used. And, like you had said, kind of exhausted what you could do and what you could offer at the school you were at. And you made a decision to go into the portal and move on. So talk a little bit about that process. So much talk out there about the transfer portal. I look at my alma mater right now, Iowa State. They have 17 people left on the football roster, one returning starter because the coach
Crazy.
left and everybody went with him, or not necessarily with him, but they all left. That's not what that was supposed to be about. Like I said, I think you use the portal the right way, but explain to me and to everybody listening, like how hard was it to leave, and what drove those decisions?
Yeah, I think I just want to start by saying it was an extremely hard decision just because it would have been the comfortable thing for me to stay. It would have been the easy thing for me to stay because I mean, I had been at SDSU for 4 years and I built relationships there, had my best friends there. Like, I knew what my role was going to be on the team, like, all of that. Like, that would have been easy for me to do and to stay in. But ultimately, like, I'm not a complacent person. And I think I wrestled with it for almost like the whole season. Obviously, I didn't know like what decision I wanted to make the whole season, but I was wrestling with that a lot career wise and in basketball, just with, I really felt like confined in a way. And I felt like I had kind of reached my ceiling in the program I was in. And my character just isn't to be complacent and never has been. And so I'm always looking for the next challenge and to grow, whether that's on the court or off the court or both. And I think for me, like this was a decision to grow on and off the court. And I think a lot of prayer went into it. This wasn't a decision I made alone. Me and God made it together, but ultimately I was led to leave and it was extremely like uncomfortable because there's uncertainty in that, and you kinda have to bet on yourself, when you go in the portal and you don't know what's gonna happen. I just really felt like I would rather risk what I have than stay in what I have knowing that there's growth out there for me, no matter what that looks like. It was time to turn the page and see where God wanted me to go and see what he wanted to teach me next.
Okay, so you ultimately made the decision to move to Oklahoma State. Since being in Oklahoma State, you've had some big games. You've had several 20 plus point nights, and you had a monster 35-point performance against Cincinnati. So obviously, you're able to play at that level. What's the transition like from a mid-major to a Power 4 school?
I think, honestly, for me, it's been the speed of the game, which I always feel like I've wanted to play fast. And so I think it fits me better than the style of SDSU and mid majors in general. But yeah, I've honestly enjoyed it so much, just the speed of the game and the pace that we play at. And possessions aren't always all the way through the shot clock. Obviously, there's a time and place. But I think that's the biggest thing I've noticed being at Oklahoma State is just the pace of the game. We want to get out and run, move the ball fast, and I think that's been probably the most enjoyable part for me.
Okay. What since going to Oklahoma State, at this point in your career, year 5, what parts of your game are you still really keying in on to improve?
Yeah, I would say just the physicality I play with. Obviously, this conference kind of requires that, and so I think I've been challenged a little bit in that way. I feel like I've really done a good job establishing my three-point shot, but I think just continuing to find the drive and the driving windows and all of that at this in this conference has been probably the biggest challenge. I think obviously I still have the ability, and so just continuing to stay true to who I am and who I know I am. Throughout the process of also realizing this is a higher level and I'm gonna mess up sometimes. My shot's gonna get blocked sometimes, and just making the next best play.
What lessons, and you've already answered this question, just not in this fashion. What lessons has basketball taught you that apply to life off of the basketball floor?
Yeah, a lot. I think just about everything you go through in basketball or any sport has life lessons that are applicable to it. I think just being part of a team is a big thing. You gotta be selfless, you gotta be bought in to other success as well. You gotta be willing to, pour into people, even if you don't know if they're gonna pour into you, and I think that just teaches you a lot about life and just the teamwork it takes to accomplish something special. Everyone has to give a little bit of something you want, for the team's success. So that's a big one. And then I just think, like I've kind of touched on it, but perseverance through struggles. And I said before, everything good in life is on the other side of hard. And I truly believe that. And so if you never go through anything, if you never have a struggle, like you're probably doing something wrong. And so I think basketball is just a really good battleground for that. And just learning to overcome the struggles and show up every day and not become weary and doing what you know you need to do to be successful. And I think that's really applicable in life. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot more too. But
Well, and
those
at
are
the
just
end
a
of the day, it's always been my philosophy that sports leads to successful human beings. I'm not in the business that I'm in to train, professional athletes and Olympians. It's awesome when I get those type of athletes. I mean, that's a great thing. But at the end of the day, personally, the things that I took away from my athletic career have made me successful in the business world and other ventures that I've done. And I think that's what everybody that should be their intention is that you're learning how to be a successful human being. And I think the focus of that has been taken away to some extent, especially at the college level, and kind of leads us into the next conversation, which is, how do you feel NIL has changed the student athlete, changed the dynamic of team sports at any level, really?
Yeah, I think it's made athletics just a lot more me focused rather than we focused. And I think a lot of people, they're trying to prove themselves for next year, or if I don't like one thing about this program, I'm leaving. Instead of just pouring into where you're at and really trying to make the most out of it first before you evaluate it. I think a lot of people just leave after one thing goes wrong and they're not really happy anywhere, honestly. And I think you miss like the relationships in the process. And I think you miss just the fruits of pouring into a place and doing something with the people you love and having success with those people over the course of your career. And I think it's sad to think about, but I think that's just the reality. I think it can still happen, but it's a lot more rare now.
Yeah, and I talk about this with my ex-teammates, from 100 years ago, but the fact is it's been 30 years and we still talk on maybe not a daily basis, but we have a text group and we still communicate a lot. We still get together, at least once a year. And we formed, that bond and those relationships because we were in the fight together to try to win championships. And we were
Right.
fortunate. We were on a team that, we were top five in the NCAA, incredible athletes, incredible personalities, dynamic human beings. And, we talk about what if it would have been like it is now and we would have all been getting paid? Would we have still had that drive and that desire to work so hard for each other? And I think that's something that's really being missed at this time, which is it was everything to me. I don't remember what I did at a certain track meet or, whatever. I remember the experience. I remember my friends that are still my friends. And it's just a lot different now, obviously. And you're kind of right in the middle of it. And unfortunately, I think there is much more of a selfish approach now. I don't know how that gets walked back at this point. I think, it kind of got out of the gates and nobody really knew what it was. And now who knows?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
Yeah. So what goals are you chasing for the rest of this season?
I think like a big thing coming to Oklahoma State was just to play free and just grow a lot. And so I think that's still my focus, just to keep growing as a basketball player. That's just who I am. It's just how I'm wired to continue growing. But I think as a team, like we have big goals in the Big 12 and we want to win a Big 12 championship. And I think that just takes staying really present where we're at in the process and just taking it one game at a time and being where our feet are and taking it one opponent at a time because really can't overlook anyone in this conference. And so I think, yeah, we do have really high aspirations for what the postseason will look like, but I think that starts now and every game matters in this conference. We lost it's a tough one to Baylor the other night. And so I think just being hungry from that loss is kind of where we're at right now. But yeah, we got TCU on Wednesday, and they're 8th in the country right now, so I think just focusing one game at a time and just pouring into the process.
Yeah. And I believe you've got a game coming up against former teammate Reese Ross at the University of Utah. When is
I don't know. I don't think right away, or I don't think in the next couple weeks, but
that's got to be kind of fun to see, somebody that you played with in high school and you're both playing at the Division 1 level. I'm sure you run into a lot of your AAU teammates as well. And again, it goes back to the experience that you're having and kind of the memories that are made. Plans after Oklahoma State University? Is there are there thoughts of continuing to play?
yeah, so I'm moving home this summer for an internship, but I do really want to look at playing overseas. I think that would be a really cool experience. I think just realizing that I'm gonna be in the real world after this year, makes me realize how good we have it as athletes, just being able to compete and perform, and honestly, I wanna do that as long as I possibly can. Yeah, just trying to stay present right now, but, definitely will be looking for those opportunities after the season.
Sure, sure. So tell me something after everything that we've talked about, and I know how driven you are and how mentally strong you are, how much work you've put in. What is something, and I'll ask you this first at the high school level, what is something you would have done differently if you had the opportunity?
I think honestly, I think it just goes back to what I was talking about knowing your value outside of the court, because I think that was a hard lesson I had to learn and in college, and obviously you have to go through it sometimes to you have to hit rock bottom in those ways just to like learn that lesson, but I think if I would have just known more of who I was as a person outside of basketball, and honestly, just growing in my faith throughout college has really helped me with that. But I think a lot of my mental blocks and just staying in slumps has rooted from just not knowing who I was off the court. And I think a lot of athletes go through that. It's not really talked about enough, I don't think, but you have to know who you are off the court, out of performance, all of that, in order to honestly perform freely. And I think when you perform freely, you perform your best because you know who you are regardless of the outcome. And so I think that's a lesson that I wish I would have learned sooner, but honestly, I don't know if I could have. I think you kind of have to hit that point where you have to look inside yourself and say, who really am I and what am I going to believe about myself?
Yeah, and that's an incredibly profound thing for somebody of your age to recognize. As a teenager, it's very, very hard to know who you are because things are changing daily. And
Yeah.
I read a book one time and it said, at 14, 15, 16 years old, you may not know who you are and what you want, but you should know who you aren't at that point. You can kind of go
Yeah.
at it at a different angle and start to, understand who you're not going to be. But I think, even the fact that you're recognizing that at your age, that's such a great thing. And you know what? 5 years from now, you're going to think the way you think now is incredibly, you're going to grow so much in those increments. And through the rest of your life, you're going to look back in okay, man, I was just doing that last week and that's incredibly embarrassing that I was still thinking that way. And that's life. So, I think to your credit, the fact that you realize that at such a young age is just setting you up for a great life, whenever basketball does come to an end. So, and again, just to summarize, you've said this probably a few different times, but to you, what is long-term athletic development?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is consistency. Not to beat a dead horse, but you have to be consistent and you have to show up week after week, even when your friends are off doing whatever. It's going to take sacrifices. I think all the greats have sacrificed a lot to be where they're at. And so you have to just decide what it is that you want. And if you don't want to be at the next level, that's totally fine, but you can't have both. There's sacrifices that come with getting to the level that you want to get to. And you just have to, ask yourself what's most important. Is it most important to have a social life all the time, 24/7? Or do you want to play at the next level and stick with the grind even when no one else does? And just be okay with being lonely at times because it'll always be worth it.
Good comments. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start wrapping up here. You said you like to play fast. Okay, so we're going to play fast.
Gee.
We're going to go rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you a question. I want a short answer. Got it?
Okay. Got
Okay.
it.
Favorite road trip snack?
Kit Kats.
Toughest opponent you've faced?
Oklahoma.
Best advice a coach has ever given you?
Just do it.
Music or playlist that gets you game ready?
Headlines by Drake.
One thing that you're passionate about outside of basketball?
Jesus.
If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Know who you do it for.
One drill you never skip?
Stretching.
Favorite lift?
Squats.
Nice.
Hot take. Definitely hot take.
Hardest skill to master?
Golf. Started this summer, so I know I've learned that the hard way.
Best recovery tool?
Fireflies.
One habit that changed your game?
Consistency.
Okay. What separates good players from great ones?
Mindset.
Perfect. All right. That was awesome. I'd say you passed that quiz. So,
Some of them I was like, I don't know if I have a quick answer for this.
well, I got to put you on the spot. So,
You had to. Had to do it.
anyways, Haleigh, I sure appreciate you coming on the show. You said some really awesome things that I'm sure our listeners will take away. It's been a pleasure to work with you over the years and watch what you've accomplished. So thank you so much for being on the show, and best of luck with the rest of the season. Be watching you in the NCAA tournament and the Big 12s. And I just have a hunch that whatever you put your mind to, you're going to accomplish. So thank you. Thanks for taking the time, and I look forward to seeing you next.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and obviously appreciate just all you've done for me, and can see just the impact you're having on so many athletes and people. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Haleigh. Thank you for joining Building the Athlete today. Appreciate you listening in. A great conversation with Haleigh Timmer, Oklahoma State Cowgirl basketball, transfer from South Dakota State University. She's tearing it up in the Big 12. Look forward to seeing how the season goes for her. Like I said, I just have a hunch that she's going to accomplish whatever she sets her mind to. If you are an athlete that's learning to get, wanting to get to the next level, and you need help with that athletic performance piece, please check out bensonsportstraining.com. You can also check out a lot of our instructional work and videos on Benson Sports Training Instagram, on Facebook, on our YouTube channel. Here to help. Look forward to hearing from you, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for being with us today.